Like in geometry, we can translate, reflect, and stretch the graphs of functions. We will explore this further using the Geometer Sketchpad. Firstly, we will select the arrow tool. Then we will go to the Graph tab in the left-hand corner and we will select Plot New Function. The function we will be plotting is y is equal to x squared, or in this case fx is equal to x squared. As you can see, we have plotted this function. Then we will go to the graph again and we will plot new function. In this case, we will plot x squared plus 2. Make sure that your function matches that in the investigation and select OK. As you can see, we now have fx and gx plotted. Then we will go to graph. Again, we will plot a new function, and in this case we will plot x squared minus 3. And select OK. As you can see, now we have fx, gx and hx plotted. Now we will again go to graph, and in this case, using the functions tab in the new window, we will select square root, as we are plotting qx is equal to the square root of x. As you can see, we have now plotted qx. We will then again go to the graph, plot a new function, and in this case, again using the functions tab, we will plot square root of x, and this time it will be the square root of x plus 4. And we will see how that changes our original graph. And lastly, we will again go to the graph. We will plot a new function. Again, using the functions tab, we will select the square root of x, and in this case it will be the square root of x minus 5. And we will select OK. From this, we can now see what happens to the graphs if you add a constant to the y value, and what happens when you subtract a constant from the y value. For the second part of this investigation, we will go to File and we will open a new blank sketch. Then we will go to Graph and we will plot a new function, and we will plot x squared. Then we will go to Graph again, plot a new function, and in this case we will be plotting x plus 3 squared. Repeating the same steps, we will again plot a new function, and in this case we will be plotting x minus 2 squared. Making sure that the function that we are given matches the one given in the investigation. Now that we have all three functions on the same grid, you may discuss your observations with a partner and explain how gx and hx can be obtained using fx. Then we will graph again using the Graph tab. We will plot a new function, and now using the Functions tab, we will plot the square root of x. Then, repeating the same steps, we will plot the square root of x plus 4, making sure that our function matches the one given in the investigation. And then, one final time, we will plot a new function, and we will plot the square root of x minus 5. From this, you may now discuss what happens when you add a constant to the x value and what happens when you subtract a constant from the x value. For the third part of this investigation, we have again opened a new sketch by going to File and selecting New Sketch. Now we will again graph to plot a new function, and we will plot x squared as well as negative x squared, making sure that our function matches the one given in the investigation. You may discuss your observations with your partner and explain how we can use gx to obtain fx. Then we will again plot a new function. Going to graph, plot new function, and we will be using the functions tab and plot square root of x. Then we will also graph, plot new function, and we will plot the negative of the square root of x, making sure that our function matches the one given in the investigation. Again, we will go to graph, we will plot a new function, and now we will plot 2 to the power of x as well as negative 2 to the power of x. From this, what happens when you multiply the whole function by -1? For the fourth part, we have again opened a new sketch. Then we will, by selecting the Graph tab, plot a new function. Using the Functions tab, we will plot the square root of x. Then, again going to the graph, plot new function, functions, we will be plotting the square root of -x. Now you may discuss your observations with a partner and how gx can be obtained from fx. Then we will again go to graph, plot a new function, and we will plot 2 to the power of x, making sure our function matches the one given in the investigation. Then, again going to graph and plotting a new function, we will plot 2 to the power of -x. Now, you may discuss what happens to the graph if you multiply the x value by -1. For part 5, in a new sketch, we will be plotting using the Graph tab, plotting a new function, x cubed minus 4x. Then, repeating the same steps, graph, plot new function, we will be plotting 2 bracket x cubed minus 4x. Discuss what you can see with your partner and explains what happens if you multiply a whole function by a constant bigger than 1. Then, to clear things up, we will open a new sketch, and in this new sketch we will plot again x cubed minus 4x. Then, in this case, we will plot a new function, plotting a half brackets x cubed minus 4x, making sure that the function given here is the same as the one given in the investigation. Select OK, and then, from what you can see, discuss your observations with your partner and explain what happens when you multiply the whole function by a constant between 0 and 1. For the sixth and final part of this investigation, in a new sketch, we will be plotting using the graph tab, plot new function, x cubed minus 4x. Then, repeating the steps, graph, plot new function, we will be plotting 2x cubed minus 2x, making sure that our functions match the ones given in the textbook. Select OK, and discuss what observations can be seen with your partner and what happens if you multiply the x value by a constant bigger than 1. Then we will open a new sketch, and in this new sketch we will plot the same function, namely x cubed minus 4x. In this case, plotting our second function, we will be plotting a half x cubed minus 4 and then a half x. Then you may discuss your observations with your partner and explain what happens when you multiply the x value by a constant between 0 and 1.